The mahogany door of Admiral Wilhelm Canaris's office slammed shut with such force that his porcelain coffee cup rattled against its saucer, sending ripples across the dark surface of his morning coffee. Outside the tall windows of Abwehr headquarters on Tirpitzufer 76 to 78, the Landwehr Canal flowed past the same spot where Rosa Luxemburg's bullet-riddled body had been dumped 24 years earlier, during the chaos of Germany's first failed revolution. Now, as chief of German military intelligence in the spring of 1943, Canaris held in his trembling hands a collection of reports that would challenge everything the Nazi leadership believed about their enemies, and ultimately seal the fate of the Third Reich. The date was March 17, 1943. The folder before him contained intelligence that seemed mathematically impossible, strategically implausible, and ideologically heretical. According to 17 independent sources spanning 4 continents, Ford Motor Company's Willow Run plant in Michigan was producing one complete B-24 Liberator bomber every 63 minutes at peak production. Each of these flying fortresses contained 1.5 million individual parts, 450,000 rivets, 30,000 separate components, and 4 massive Pratt & Whitney engines, all assembled by workers who 18 months earlier had been farmers, housewives, and shopkeepers. Like, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe for more hidden World War II stories. The Americans were building these supremely complex war machines faster than Germany could produce simple Kübelwagen military vehicles. They were doing it with women workers, Negro workers, teenagers, and immigrants. Precisely the demographic groups that Nazi racial theory declared inherently inferior and incapable of sophisticated industrial labor. Major Friedrich Wilhelm Heinz stood at rigid attention before Canaris's desk, his SS uniform immaculate despite the perspiration beading on his forehead. He had spent 3 weeks verifying every source, cross-referencing every calculation, and triple-checking every mathematical computation. The conclusions remained stubbornly, impossibly, terrifyingly consistent. Herr Admiral, Heinz said carefully, choosing his words with the precision of a man who knew that intelligence reports could mean the difference between promotion and execution. The data comes from 17 independent sources across 4 continents. Mexican industrialists sympathetic to our cause, Spanish diplomats with access to American facilities, Swedish businessmen conducting legitimate trade, even intercepted personal letters from American workers to their relatives in neutral countries. Every source reports the same production rate. Every calculation points to the same impossible conclusion. Canaris lifted one of the photographs with hands that had begun to shake more frequently in recent months, not from age, but from the accumulated weight of truths that could not be spoken aloud in the Third Reich. The black and white image showed an assembly line stretching beyond the camera's focus, with partially completed bombers moving in steady procession past hundreds of workers. "And you personally verified these sources?" Canaris asked, though he already knew the answer. "Jawohl, Herr Admiral. Agent Wolf in Mexico City has been reliable for 18 months. Our contact in the Spanish embassy has provided accurate intelligence on 12 previous occasions. The Swedish industrialist has no political motivation to fabricate information. He seeks only profitable trade relationships after the war." What neither officer fully comprehended was that this moment would trigger one of the most devastating intelligence failures in military history. Not because German spies couldn't gather accurate information, but because Nazi leadership would systematically refuse to believe any intelligence that contradicted their fundamental worldview about race, democracy, and industrial capability. The German intelligence failure regarding American industrial capacity had roots far deeper than simple miscalculation or professional skepticism. It grew from the very ideological soil of Nazi racial theory, economic doctrine, and political philosophy. To understand why German leadership rejected accurate intelligence about American production, one must first understand what they believed about American society. Heinrich Himmler had articulated the Nazi view in a 1941 speech to SS officers. The United States is a mongrel nation, polluted by inferior races and weakened by democratic chaos. Jews control their finance, Negroes perform their labor, women have abandoned their natural roles. Such a society cannot achieve the discipline, dedication, and racial purity necessary for superior industrial production. Hermann Göring, as Reichsmarshal and head of German aircraft production, had built his entire strategic planning on the assumption of American industrial inferiority. When Luftwaffe General Karl Koller presented reports from Washington in 1941, stating that American aircraft production was approaching 2,000 planes per month, Göring's response embodied the Nazi leadership's fundamental misconceptions. Impossible, Göring had declared, slamming his fist on the conference table at Karen Hall. Americans can only build refrigerators and razor blades. They have no understanding of precision engineering, no commitment to excellence, no racial unity necessary for complex manufacturing. Their democratic system creates chaos. Their racial mixing creates weakness. Their Jewish influence creates corruption. They cannot, they will not, outproduce the German master race. This wasn't merely professional skepticism or wartime propaganda. It represented genuine belief in Nazi racial theory. The entire Nazi worldview demanded that the master race be superior in all endeavors, especially those requiring discipline, precision, and technological sophistication. To accept that a democratic, racially diverse society could outproduce the Third Reich was to question the fundamental premises upon which Hitler had built his movement and his war. Hitler himself had reinforced these prejudices during strategy sessions at the Wolf's Lair. 4 days after Pearl Harbor, addressing his senior staff, the Führer had dismissed American industrial potential with characteristic certainty. The Americans are a mongrel people, without racial consciousness, without national unity. Their democracy makes them weak, their diversity makes them inefficient, their Jewish influence makes them corrupt. They talk of mass production, but they cannot achieve what we have built through racial purity and national socialism. They are bluffing. They must be bluffing. Dr. Robert Ley, head of the German Labor Front, had provided pseudo-scientific justification for these beliefs. Industrial excellence requires racial homogeneity, social discipline, and worker dedication that only National Socialism can provide. American workers, lacking racial consciousness and proper leadership, cannot achieve the precision and commitment necessary for advanced manufacturing. Their women workers will create chaos, their Negro workers will cause sabotage, their Jewish managers will prioritize profit over quality. These weren't casual prejudices. They formed the intellectual framework through which Nazi leadership interpreted all intelligence about enemy capabilities. When accurate reports began arriving about American industrial achievements, they weren't just challenging German estimates. They were challenging the entire philosophical foundation of Nazi ideology. While Nazi leaders in Berlin dismissed American capabilities based on ideological assumptions, German intelligence networks across the Americas were methodically documenting the Industrial Revolution occurring in Detroit, Seattle, Los Angeles, and dozens of other American cities. These reports came through multiple independent channels, each more alarming than the last, each more difficult to dismiss as enemy propaganda. The Abwehr's most productive network operated from Mexico City under the direction of Georg Nikolaus, a former Hamburg businessman who had established extensive contacts among American oil executives, aircraft manufacturers, and military contractors. Mexico's neutral status and thriving trade relationships with the United States provided perfect cover for intelligence gathering. American businessmen traveled freely between Detroit's factories and Mexico's oil fields, speaking casually of industrial miracles to their Mexican hosts, unaware that German agents were systematically recording their conversations. On February 3, 1943, American oil executive Harold Morrison attended a reception at the German-Mexican Commerce Association in Mexico City. The event, ostensibly promoting trade between Mexico and German-occupied Europe, attracted prominent American businessmen eager to explore post-war commercial opportunities. After several glasses of premium tequila, purchased with German intelligence funds specifically to loosen American tongues, Morrison began describing his recent tour of the Willow Run facility. Wolfgang Blau, a 45-year-old German agent who had spent 8 years perfecting his cover as an Argentine leather merchant, positioned himself within earshot of Morrison's increasingly animated description. Blau possessed perfect Spanish, adequate English, and exceptional memory, crucial skills for an intelligence operative whose every word would be transmitted to Berlin within days. "Gentlemen," Morrison declared to his growing audience of Mexican businessmen and supposed neutral diplomats, "what I witnessed at Willow Run defies every assumption about industrial production. The assembly line stretches for over a mile, literally a mile, through a building so vast that weather patterns form inside it. On humid days, clouds accumulate near the ceiling. During temperature changes, it actually rains inside the factory. Morrison pulled out a pencil and began sketching on a cocktail napkin, his alcohol-loosened tongue providing details worth more than a dozen covert operations. They employ 42,000 workers around the clock, 3 full shifts operating continuously. The workforce includes thousands of women, Negro women, teenagers, immigrants, even disabled workers. These people are assembling the most complex machine ever created by human hands. Blau interjected a carefully crafted question, maintaining his Argentine accent while probing for technical specifications. Surely, Signor Morrison, such complexity requires extensive training, experienced craftsmen, traditional manufacturing methods. Morrison laughed heartily, clearly enjoying his role as the expert describing American industrial miracles to fascinated foreigners. That's exactly what Consolidated Aircraft thought when Ford first proposed building bombers. They mocked Henry Ford, said you can't manufacture aircraft like automobiles. But Ford's engineers broke down the entire B-24 bomber, 1.5 million parts, remember, into 60,000 separate specific operations. Each worker performs the same task repeatedly, developing expertise through repetition rather than through years of traditional apprenticeship. The American executive's next revelation would have shattered Nazi racial theory if anyone in Berlin had been willing to listen. A woman who 18 months ago was cooking breakfast for her family now installs complex hydraulic systems in bomber tail sections. A Negro teenager who was picking cotton in Alabama now operates precision machinery calibrated to thousandths of an inch. An immigrant from Poland who spoke no English in 1941 now supervises the installation of bomb bay doors. They train these workers in days or weeks, not months or years. Blau pressed for more specific details, maintaining casual interest while memorizing information that would fill a dozen intelligence reports. But surely, with such rapid training and diverse workforce, quality must suffer. Production rates must be inconsistent. Morrison's response demolished every Nazi assumption about racial capabilities and democratic efficiency. Quality has actually improved as production rates increased. They've developed foolproof systems, precision jigs, and quality control methods that make errors virtually impossible. Workers don't need to think. They follow systems that guarantee perfection. The result? They're producing aircraft faster and better than anyone thought possible. Perhaps the most detailed and technically sophisticated intelligence about American aircraft production reached Berlin through Francisco Franco's Spain. Despite Spain's official neutrality, Franco maintained complex relationships with both sides of the conflict, providing limited assistance to Germany while avoiding full commitment to the Axis cause. Colonel José Ungría, Spanish military attaché in Washington, had cultivated extensive relationships throughout American industrial and military circles. His position as representative of a neutral nation provided access to American facilities, officials, and technical information that German agents could never obtain directly. Moreover, Spanish intelligence services maintained cooperative relationships with the Abwehr, exchanging information for German technical assistance and material support. In March 1943, Ungría received an invitation to a reception at the Argentine embassy, one of many social events that formed the backbone of Washington diplomatic life. Among the guests was Charles Sorensen, Ford's chief production executive and the architect of the Willow Run production miracle. Sorensen, believing he was speaking to a representative of a neutral nation that might become a post-war customer for American aircraft, spoke freely about Ford's revolutionary manufacturing achievements. "Colonel Ungría," Sorensen said during their conversation, unaware that every word would be transmitted to Berlin within 2 weeks through Spanish diplomatic channels. "When I first visited Consolidated Aircraft's San Diego facility in 1940, I witnessed the most inefficient manufacturing process imaginable. They were building B-24 bombers outdoors, exposed to weather, with each aircraft essentially handcrafted by teams of workers. Each bomber required 180,000 man-hours of labor and cost nearly $400,000 to produce." Ungría, drawing upon his engineering education at Spanish military academies, pressed for technical details that would interest his German contacts. How did Ford propose to improve upon such established methods. Aircraft manufacturing seems fundamentally different from automobile production. Sorensen's eyes lit up with the enthusiasm of an innovator describing his greatest achievement. That's exactly what everyone said. You can't build airplanes like cars. But I spent one night in my hotel room in San Diego, sketching out the entire production flow from raw materials to finished aircraft. The key insight was revolutionary. Instead of having teams of workers swarm over stationary aircraft, we would move the aircraft past stationary workers, with each worker performing specific repetitive tasks. The Spanish colonel encouraged Sorensen to elaborate, claiming professional interest as a military engineer responsible for evaluating Spain's post-war aviation needs. Sorensen, proud of his achievement and eager to share technical details with a knowledgeable audience, provided information that would fill volumes of intelligence reports. We constructed the largest manufacturing facility ever built, 3.5 million square feet under one roof, with an assembly line stretching 5,462 feet. We installed 1,600 specialized machine tools, many designed for single, specific operations. The capital investment exceeded $200 million, more than the entire German aircraft industry had invested since 1933. But Sorensen's most shocking revelation concerned the workforce composition that would have horrified Nazi racial theorists. We built an apprentice training school that processes 8,000 new workers weekly. Our workforce is 40% women, and they're actually superior to men for many tasks. Smaller hands for tight spaces, more patience for repetitive work, greater attention to detail. We employ 3,800 Negro workers, operating the most sophisticated machinery ever created. We have teenagers managing complex supply logistics. Democracy means utilizing all available human resources, regardless of traditional prejudices. Ungria's final question produced the most strategically significant intelligence of the entire conversation. What production rates has Ford achieved with these methods? At peak efficiency, Sorensen replied with evident satisfaction, we produce one complete B-24 Liberator every 63 minutes, 42,000 workers, operating around the clock, building the world's most complex machine faster than traditional manufacturers could produce simple training aircraft. German intelligence networks soon received corroborating reports from multiple independent sources across several continents, creating a web of evidence too comprehensive to dismiss as isolated propaganda or misinformation. Through Swedish, Argentine, Japanese, and Turkish diplomatic and commercial channels, German intelligence officers compiled consistent confirmations of American industrial capabilities that defied every Nazi assumption about democratic societies and racial hierarchies. Eric Lundberg, a Swedish engineer with extensive European manufacturing experience, visited Willow Run in March 1943 as part of a neutral nation's evaluation of post-war aviation technology. His subsequent report to Stockholm, intercepted by German intelligence, provided technical analysis from someone with no political motivation to exaggerate American capabilities. The Willow Run facility operates with efficiency that challenges European understanding of industrial organization. Lundberg wrote, they employ 1,600 specialized machine tools, many designed for single operations that would be performed by skilled craftsmen in European factories. The capital investment appears staggering, perhaps $200 million for tooling alone, representing more resources than most European nations have devoted to entire industries. Lundberg's engineering assessment continued with details that would have alarmed German military planners if they had been willing to accept the intelligence. Production rate calculations based on direct observation suggest monthly output exceeding 600 completed aircraft. Quality control methods ensure consistency despite workforce diversity that includes women, minorities, and recently trained workers. Assembly line organization eliminates bottlenecks that plague traditional manufacturing methods. Japanese intelligence provided independent verification through their own networks. Commander Toshikazu Okami's coded message to Tokyo, intercepted and decrypted by German cryptographers, confirmed American production rates from an entirely different perspective. Single Ford facility produces more military aircraft monthly than the entire Japanese aviation industry. American industrial capacity exceeds all previous intelligence estimates by factors of 3 to 5. Recommend immediate strategic reassessment of Pacific War objectives based on mathematical impossibility of matching American production rates. Even Swiss banking contacts provided corroborating financial evidence. Credit Suisse reports showed Ford's raw material purchases that supported the production claims. £16 million of aluminum monthly for the Willow Run facility alone, more than Germany's entire national aluminum production capacity. Steel purchases, electrical consumption, and transportation logistics all confirmed industrial activity on scales that German economists had considered impossible for any single manufacturing facility. Turkish diplomatic reports added another layer of confirmation. Turkey's ambassador to the United States, maintaining careful neutrality while gathering information for potential post-war relationships, reported to Ankara, American aircraft production appears to exceed combined European capacity. Industrial organization utilizes demographic groups traditionally excluded from skilled manufacturing in European societies. Results suggest democratic systems may possess industrial advantages not recognized by totalitarian economic theories. By April 1943, German intelligence had assembled comprehensive documentation from 23 independent sources across 4 continents. Mathematical analysis of the data produced conclusions that were strategically terrifying and ideologically unacceptable. Willow Run alone was producing 650 B-24 bombers monthly at peak capacity, with total American B-24 production exceeding 1,400 aircraft monthly across all manufacturers. Desperate for ground truth that could either confirm or refute the accumulating intelligence reports, Admiral Canaris authorized a modification of Operation Pastorius, the planned insertion of German saboteurs into the United States via submarine. However, the mission's primary objective quietly shifted from sabotage to intelligence gathering, reflecting Canaris's growing conviction that understanding American industrial capacity had become more critical than conducting isolated acts of sabotage. George John Dash, selected to lead one of the 2 four-man teams, possessed qualifications that made him ideal for intelligence gathering rather than destruction. He had lived in America for 20 years before returning to Germany in 1939, working in restaurants, hotels, and factories across the Midwest. He understood American industrial culture, spoke English without accent, and possessed the observational skills necessary for detailed intelligence collection. Canaris's personal briefing to Dash revealed the true nature of the mission. Your primary objective is not sabotage, it is verification. We need photographic evidence of aircraft production rates, employee documentation, shipping records, anything that will force the Reichsmarschall to accept mathematical reality. The future of the Reich may depend more on accurate intelligence than on isolated acts of destruction. In the early morning hours of June 13, 1942, Dash's team came ashore at Amagansett, Long Island, from U-202, carrying forged documents, American currency, and sophisticated cameras designed for industrial espionage. Their target was not American infrastructure, but American industrial truth. However, within 72 hours of landing, Dash made a decision that would provide Americans with invaluable insight into German intelligence concerns and Nazi leadership psychology. Tormented by what he had already observed about American industrial capacity and horrified by the implications of his mission, Dash contacted the FBI and surrendered voluntarily. During extensive interrogations conducted by FBI counterintelligence specialists, Dash revealed information that stunned his American captors and provided crucial insight into German strategic thinking. Special Agent Charles Lanman, an experienced counterintelligence officer, found Dash's revelations about German disbelief more shocking than typical espionage confessions. Admiral Canaris himself told me that Berlin refuses to believe American production figures, Dash explained during one session. They consider Willow Run propaganda, an elaborate deception designed to discourage German military planning. Canaris wanted photographs, employee counts, shipping manifests, anything that would force Goering and Hitler to accept reality. Lanman asked incredulously, "They don't believe we're producing a bomber every hour?" Dash's response revealed the psychological and ideological blindness that was crippling German strategic planning. Agent Lanman, I lived in America for 20 years. I worked in automobile factories, watched American industrial methods, understood American capabilities. I tried to explain to my handlers that if Ford could produce a complete car every minute during peacetime, they could certainly produce a bomber every hour during wartime. They accused me of defeatism, of being corrupted by American propaganda. The German agent's most revealing confession concerned Nazi racial theories and industrial prejudices. They simply cannot believe that women, workers, Negro workers, immigrant workers can achieve precision manufacturing. Their entire worldview demands that the German master race be superior in all endeavors, especially those requiring technical skill and industrial discipline. To accept American production figures would be to accept that their racial theories are false. April 20th, 1943, Adolf Hitler's 54th birthday, provided the occasion for one of the most consequential intelligence briefings of the Second World War. Admiral Canaris had requested a personal meeting with Reichsmarschall Hermann Göring at Carinhall, his ostentatious hunting estate north of Berlin, to present the accumulated evidence about American aircraft production. Canaris arrived at Carinhall carrying 2 leather portfolios filled with photographs, documents, reports, and mathematical analyses that represented months of intelligence gathering from around the world. He had rehearsed his presentation carefully, knowing that the future of German military planning, and possibly the outcome of the war, might depend on his ability to convince Nazi leadership to accept uncomfortable truths. The meeting occurred in Göring's private study, a room designed to intimidate visitors with its massive oak furniture, hunting trophies from across the world Europe, and Renaissance paintings looted from conquered territories. Göring himself, weighing over 280 pounds by this stage of the war and sustained by increasing doses of morphine and other medications, represented the physical decline of Nazi leadership's connection to reality. Herr Reichsmarschall, Canaris began with careful formality, spreading documents across Göring's enormous desk. I must present intelligence that requires immediate strategic consideration. We have accumulated evidence from 17 independent sources confirming that Ford Motor Company's Willow Run facility is producing B-24 Liberator bombers at a rate of 1 aircraft every hour during peak production periods. Göring's initial reaction embodied everything wrong with Nazi intelligence analysis. Rather than examining the evidence, he focused on the implications for Nazi racial theory and political doctrine. Picking up one of the aerial photographs showing the mile-long assembly line stretching across the Michigan countryside, Göring's response revealed the ideological blindness that was dooming German military planning. "Canaris," Göring said with contempt that bordered on rage, "do you take me for a complete fool? These are obviously wooden mock-ups, theatrical props designed for American propaganda photography. The Americans want us to believe they can manufacture complex aircraft like sausages in a meatpacking plant. This supposed Willow Run facility probably produces 50 bombers monthly at most, and those of inferior quality suitable only for training purposes." Canaris pulled additional documents from his portfolio, including intercepted railroad manifests, showing aluminum shipments to the Ford facility. Herr Reichsmarschall, according to Pennsylvania Railroad documentation, they are consuming 16 million pounds of aluminum monthly at this single plant. That exceeds our entire national aluminum production capacity. Göring's response revealed how completely Nazi ideology had displaced rational analysis. And where do they obtain this miraculous aluminum? Do their Negro workers mine it with their bare hands? Do their women workers refine it in kitchen ovens? Canaris, you have been completely deceived by American propaganda designed specifically to discourage German resolve. The Reichsmarschall's dismissal continued with increasingly irrational explanations for the intelligence reports. These inflated production claims serve American psychological warfare objectives. They want to convince us that resistance is futile, that their mongrel democracy can outproduce our racially pure National Socialist system. It's impossible, mathematically, racially, and ideologically impossible. 1 week after the Carinhall meeting, Canaris received a summons that every intelligence officer dreaded: a personal briefing for Adolf Hitler at the Wolf's Lair, the Führer's heavily fortified headquarters in East Prussia. The meeting would include General Alfred Jodl, Chief of Wehrmacht Operations Staff, General Wilhelm Keitel, Chief of German Armed Forces High Command, and Propaganda Minister Joseph Goebbels. The assembled leadership represented the core of Nazi strategic decision-making, and their reaction to American production intelligence would determine German military planning for the remainder of the war. Hitler received Canaris in his map room, where massive charts of the Eastern Front dominated the walls, showing Wehrmacht preparations for Operation Citadel, the planned summer offensive against Soviet forces at Kursk. The Führer appeared exhausted, his hands trembling slightly as he studied intelligence reports while Canaris outlined the evidence for American industrial capabilities. Mein Führer, Canaris said, knowing that he was literally risking his life by presenting intelligence that contradicted Nazi ideology. If American aircraft production has indeed reached 1,400 B-24 bombers monthly, plus equal numbers of B-17 flying, fortresses, plus their fighter aircraft production, plus British Empire production, the combined Allied aerial bombing capability will soon exceed our defensive capacity by mathematical orders of magnitude. Hitler's response was characteristically dogmatic, revealing how completely ideological certainty had replaced strategic analysis in Nazi decision-making. Admiral Canaris, the Americans, have demonstrated capability in mass production of simple consumer goods. Automobiles, refrigerators, radios, but a military bomber is not a household appliance. It requires precision engineering, skilled craftsmanship, and dedicated commitment that only racially conscious peoples can provide. The Führer continued with an analysis that demonstrated complete disconnection from industrial reality. Consider the timeline, Admiral. When Germany required 6 years of intensive preparation to develop our aircraft industry, the Americans claim to have achieved superior production in 16 months. It violates every principle of industrial development, every requirement of technical education, every necessity of workforce training. General Jodl, one of Germany's most competent military planners, attempted mathematical analysis of Canaris's figures. Mein Führer, even if we accept only 1/4 of these reported production rates as accurate, the figures are false, Hitler interrupted with finality that ended all discussion. The Americans entered this war in December 1941. Constructing massive industrial facilities, training inexperienced workers, and achieving complex production in such abbreviated time is impossible. It contradicts everything we understand about industrial development and racial capabilities. Hitler's final pronouncement on American industrial intelligence would prove to be one of the most catastrophic strategic miscalculations in military history. Admiral, these exaggerated claims serve obvious propaganda purposes. The Americans seek to discourage our resolve through mathematical deception. Reality will prove that democratic chaos and racial mixing cannot compete with National Socialist discipline and Aryan superiority. Unknown to Hitler, Goering, or any other Nazi leader, Admiral Canaris had obtained what should have been conclusive proof of American industrial capabilities, actual motion picture footage of Willow Run in operation. The 5-minute film reel, shot by American industrial photographers and smuggled to Germany through Swiss intelligence contacts, showed the assembly line in full operation during peak production hours. In a secured room in Abwehr headquarters, with curtains drawn and doors locked, Canaris and his deputy Hans Oster watched the footage that should have ended all debate about American production capabilities. The film's quality was excellent, showing clear details of the manufacturing process that no propaganda effort could have fabricated. The camera traveled along the entire mile-long assembly line, revealing B-24 bombers in every stage of construction, moving past at steady, measured pace. Workers, men and women, white and black, young and middle-aged, performed tasks with mechanical precision that demonstrated both excellent training and efficient organization. A large clock visible in several shots provided irrefutable timing evidence, confirming that aircraft were indeed completing final assembly at hourly intervals. "Mein Gott," Oster whispered as they watched teams of women workers installing complex electrical systems in bomber cockpits. "It's not just true, it's more efficient than our best aircraft factories. They've achieved mass production methods that we thought impossible for complex machinery." The film showed racial integration that would have shattered Nazi ideology. White supervisors working alongside Negro technicians, women operating sophisticated machinery, immigrant workers performing precision tasks that German doctrine insisted required years of traditional apprenticeship by racially superior craftsmen. Canaris made the most painful decision of his intelligence career as the film reached its conclusion. Taking his cigarette lighter, he held the flame to the celluloid until it ignited, watching months of irreplaceable intelligence evidence burn in his ashtray. "We cannot show this to them," Canaris said quietly as smoke filled the room. "They would accuse us of fabricating enemy propaganda, of treason, of attempting to undermine German morale. The truth has become more dangerous than enemy deception." This moment encapsulated the complete breakdown of German intelligence systems. They possessed definitive proof of enemy capabilities, but their own leadership had made it impossible to present evidence that contradicted Nazi racial and political doctrine. In November 1943, German intelligence obtained aerial photographs of Willow Run taken by a Spanish diplomat during a commercial flight over Detroit. The photographs, captured with high-quality cameras during optimal lighting conditions, provided detailed overhead views of the facility that should have ended all speculation about American production capabilities. German photo intelligence specialists spent weeks analyzing the images with magnifying glasses, measuring instruments, and mathematical calculations. Their conclusions were unambiguous and alarming. The facility was indeed massive beyond European industrial experience, operating at capacity levels that confirmed human intelligence reports. Photo analyst Hermann Werner compiled a detailed assessment that landed on Göring's desk in December 1943. Photographic evidence confirms human intelligence estimates. Parking lots contain approximately 12,000 automobiles, indicating continuous three-shift operations. 47 completed B-24 aircraft are visible at adjacent Willow Run Airport, ready for delivery to combat units. Assembly line structures are clearly visible through factory skylights, with aircraft spaced exactly as reported by human sources. Additional photographic details supported the production rate claims. Railroad sidings showed dozens of freight cars, delivering raw materials. Electrical infrastructure indicated power consumption levels equivalent to major cities. Worker housing developments suggested employment numbers matching intelligence estimates. Werner's recommendations were professionally sound and strategically crucial. Photographic evidence supports all major elements of human intelligence reporting. Recommend immediate strategic reassessment of enemy production capabilities and adjustment of German military planning accordingly. Göring's response to definitive photographic proof demonstrated how completely ideology had displaced rational analysis in Nazi decision-making. Rather than accepting evidence that contradicted his worldview, the Reichsmarschall dismissed photographic reality as elaborate deception. These images represent clever American photographic manipulation, probably using scale models and Hollywood special effects techniques. The Americans have extensive experience with motion picture propaganda. They are simply applying these deception methods to military intelligence. Dr. Albert Speer, Hitler's armaments minister and one of the few Nazi leaders who understood industrial reality, secretly studied intelligence on American production. His diary shows the anguish of an expert trapped in a system that punished truth. On May 15, 1943, he wrote, "If Willow Run's figures are even half correct, we face not just defeat, but industrial annihilation. They produce more aircraft in 1 month than we in a year. Their aluminum and electrical consumption exceeds our national output." Yet he admitted, "I cannot speak this truth. To present these numbers would mean my death," accused of treason and defeatism. The system rewards lies and punishes truth. Speer noted Ford had built 1.1 million cars in 1941, then converted to bombers without halting civilian production. Proof of American capacity beyond Nazi imagination. Dr. Otto Ohlendorf, head of SD Inland Intelligence, confirmed the same. His December 1943 report to Himmler warned, "Willow Run is only one facility. Boeing, Douglas, Consolidated, and dozens more produce at similar rates. By June 1944, the US will field enough B-24s to match our entire 1940 London Blitz tonnage every day. Allied bombing strength will outnumber us 10 to 1. On Christmas Eve, 1943, Admiral Canaris received intelligence reports showing American aircraft production projections for 1944 that defied comprehension and challenged mathematical credibility. The figures came from multiple sources: intercepted American military communications, neutral diplomatic reports, and captured American planning documents obtained through European resistance networks. The projected 1944 American aircraft production totals represented industrial capability that exceeded the combined output of all nations throughout military history. B-24 Liberators, 18,000 aircraft. B-17 Flying Fortresses, 12,000 aircraft. B-29 Super Fortresses, 1,000 aircraft. Fighter aircraft, all types. 40,000 aircraft. Transport and training aircraft, 15,000 aircraft. Total projected 1944 production, 86,000 aircraft. Canaris stared at these figures for hours, recalculating them repeatedly, searching for mathematical errors that would make them less catastrophic. The numbers remained consistent across all sources and all calculation methods. When presented to Hitler during a strategy conference at the Wolf's Lair, the Führer's response demonstrated complete disconnection from mathematical reality. The Americans claim they will produce more military aircraft in 1944 than all nations combined have produced throughout aviation history. It's not merely improbable, it's mathematically absurd, industrially impossible, and racially inconceivable. Hitler's dismissal continued with characteristic ideological certainty. Admiral, these inflated projections serve obvious propaganda purposes. They seek to discourage German resistance through psychological warfare based on impossible claims. No democratic society, with its chaos and racial mixing, can achieve such production levels. By February 1944, the accumulated intelligence about American production capabilities had made Canaris's position untenable. His continued presentation of accurate but ideologically unacceptable intelligence had raised suspicions about his loyalty to Nazi doctrine. He was removed from his position as head of German military intelligence, suspected of defeatism and potential treason. Walter Schellenberg, Canaris's replacement, was selected specifically for his Nazi ideological reliability rather than his intelligence expertise. Schellenberg understood that his career depended on providing intelligence assessments that supported Nazi beliefs rather than challenging them with inconvenient facts. Reality could not be denied forever. On February 20, 1944, the American 8th Air Force launched Operation Argument, Big Week, sending over 1,000 heavy bombers against German aircraft factories. For 6 days, B-24 Liberators and B-17 Flying Fortresses, many from Willow Run, dropped more tonnage on Germany than the Luftwaffe had during the entire London Blitz. The raids proved America's industrial power, advanced training, and precise coordination, contradicting every Nazi assumption of Allied weakness. Luftwaffe ace Colonel Adolf Galland told Göring, "I have counted over 800 bombers in one formation. They are not propaganda, they are destroying German cities and factories." His report confirmed their discipline, accuracy, and the overwhelming presence of P-51 and P-47 escorts. Germany's response exposed disaster. Fewer than 400 fighters rose against over 1,000 Allied bombers, with poorly trained pilots and little fuel. Ace Günther Rahl admitted, "We face an enemy with unlimited aircraft, unlimited fuel, and unlimited trained pilots. Our intelligence underestimated America by orders of magnitude." The final, undeniable demonstration of American industrial capacity occurred on June 6, 1944, D-Day, when over 11,000 Allied aircraft appeared over the Normandy beaches in the largest single-day air operation in military history. The Luftwaffe, by contrast, managed to mount fewer than 300 fighter sorties during the entire day, representing a ratio of aircraft that made German air defense mathematically impossible. Field Marshal Hugo Sperl, commander of Luftflotte, 3 responsible for defending Western Europe, sent a desperate message to Berlin that finally acknowledged the intelligence failure that had crippled German strategic planning. The enemy's aerial superiority is absolute and overwhelming. Our earlier intelligence assessments were correct. We were deceived not by American propaganda, but by our own refusal to believe mathematical reality. The D-Day Air Armada included aircraft types and quantities that proved every element of German intelligence reporting about American production. B-24 Liberators, 1,200 aircraft, many from Willow Run. B-17 Flying Fortresses, 800 aircraft fighter aircraft, 5,000 plus aircraft of various types. Transport aircraft, 2,000 aircraft carrying paratroopers. reconnaissance and support aircraft, 2,000 plus aircraft. General Dietrich Peltz, responsible for Luftwaffe bomber operations, provided post-invasion analysis that confirmed the scope of German miscalculations. American aircraft production has exceeded our most pessimistic intelligence estimates. They possess numerical superiority that makes tactical victory impossible, regardless of individual pilot skill or aircraft performance. Performance, 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 performance.